Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy holidays. Let me actually put up my banner. So we are live. As you guys know, typically I try to go live Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. if I can, and of course Sundays Eastern time. However, we're late today, so if anybody's here watching us, thanks for jumping on. If you're not, I totally understand. Let me just check and make sure we are live. I think we're live because I think on the other end it said we were live just to make sure. If anybody does jump on later on, which probably most people might see this the next day, that you'll be able to see the replay. So first, I'm gonna start off by saying Happy Holidays if you celebrate Christmas. A happy Christmas or Merry Christmas Eve to you. Also, hopefully, you have a wonderful Christmas tomorrow if you do celebrate Christmas, and hopefully, a Happy New Year. If I should see you before the New Year's, if possible, but if not, Happy New Year to you as well. So, this, as you guys can see, the title of this particular YouTube will be this particular chat or podcast will be about Zillow sued, Trump talks, investors reorganize, and more. So, hey, what's going on, Miss H? Oh, hey, what's going on, Miss H? How you doing tonight? Merry Christmas Eve. I was trying to come on through my other desktop computer, but unfortunately, it's acting wonky. So we will be live streaming on the YouTube on my iPad, which is sucks because I can't actually share articles and videos. But hopefully, I'm glad that you're here. Hopefully, you're having a great Merry Christmas Eve if you celebrate it. And let's first jump into the topic around, let's actually jump into first the topic around the investors as far as institutional investors. And I'm going to read an article. So I'm going to be reading off my phone. If you have any questions or anything you want to talk about, let me know. So recently, a study was done in regards to, it says, how much of America's housing is owned by corporations. It says an analyst of 500 urban counties found that 1 in 11 parcels is corporate owned, but the share is much higher in areas where mega investors have proliferated. Sorry. And of course, it's going to be different in every area. Like I always say, the reason why I talk about this so much in vast context in regards to corporate institutional investors, corporate investors, however you want to name them, hedge funds, is because we do have a lot of them in the metro area of Atlanta, Georgia. However, this report is going to kind of pick out some other ones. So it says, who owns America? It says that's the question a new study on corporate ownership of housing seeks to answer. The report released by Lincoln Institute of Land Policy in November offers more context to the complex and often misunderstood and misrepresented topic of investor activity and ownership. By analyzing, it says, by analyzing parcel level data from nearly 500 urban counties, researchers sought to track corporate property ownership via LLC, partnerships, trusts, and other structures that often obscure true ownership in order to create consistent nationwide methodology for classifying who owns what. It says the result is one of the most comprehensive views to date of how and where corporate entities control residential property, where corporate out-of-state ownership is highest. So it says Lincoln's Institute researchers found that nearly 9% of residential parcels in the urban county study, or roughly 1 in 11, are owned by corporations. But corporation doesn't necessarily signify a large national investor. Only 2.4% of parcels are owned by out-of-state companies. And then it says, meaning the vast majority of America homes remain in hands of local mom and pop investors. So they're basically saying that there is a vast majority of a lot of actual mom and pop investors in certain cities, in certain areas, as far as ownership when it comes to uh, several other properties, not just corporate investors. Hey, happy holidays to my dad, even though he's in the next room. But so it says that the share of corporate ownership is much higher in some metros. However, in St. Louis, Baltimore, Miami, Richmond, and corporations own 17% and 21% of all residential parcels, driven by in-state investors operating through LLCs. So again, it's all in certain areas that you're seeing where these corporations are kind of stacked at. So like they said, St. Louis, Baltimore, Miami, Richmond, they're seeing a larger percentage amount, 17% to 21%. Metro Atlanta area, we're seeing about, depending on where you're at, about 30% of properties that are single family. In regards to institutional investors, corporate investors, hedge funds, they own. And then if you go down to Henry County, which is south of the Fulton County area of Atlanta per se, and you get in there, there's about, I think they said about 70% of those single family homes or a lot of those properties are owned by institutional investors. It says out of state corporate buyers. Hold on, real quick. It says Manhattan is the most extreme case with corporations owning more than 50% of residential parcels. So again, even with this in regards to residential corporations owning parcels, it says residential parcels that also can possibly put in multifamily as well. So I don't know how they really broke it down. I have to dig a little bit deeper into how they broke everything down. This is just an article stating these what they have, what they kind of uncovered through this study. But if the even the 50% of the residential parcels, it could be multifamily, of course, single family, because it doesn't really pinpoint single family. It's saying residential parcels. So that could be, multifamily as well. So that means it can be apartment buildings. It could be, again, single family housing, different residential properties. It says out of state corporate buyers are especially active in fast growing Sunbelt markets, which we're in. I'm in the Sunbelt market. Um, an area that was also popular with pandemic era iBuyers and independent flippers. So if you guys don't know what an iBuyer is, that's basically someone like Open Door. At the time we had was it OfferPad, all these different things. There's like iBuyers. And Open Door is still, they're getting very strained on what they're buying, but they're still buying in some areas. But there are some pushback. So I remember I was trying to help a client who had a property in Conyers and they were behind a gated community. And at the time, Open Door, I guess they were accepting people behind gated communities. We went through the whole process. And then when it came to them coming out to do quote unquote their home inspection, they actually said they canceled on the day of, which I didn't know why they canceled. They sent an email. They didn't send a phone call to me or the seller of the property. And then after they canceled, I called because luckily I checked my email before I left at the house, and I called and I asked them why did they cancel it and not notify me as far as a physical phone call or even the seller. And they basically said, oh, we no longer take properties behind a gated community. And my first question was, well, when did this happen? Because we were literally just online. We literally were just online filling out the whole application, and it asked us, was it behind a gated community, not a gated community? And we clicked yes, behind a gated community. So you knew it was behind a gated community. So why all of a sudden, knowing this information, and you guys still went ahead to go about, the next steps to get to the home inspection process, and then all of a sudden you cancel without telling no one. And so they were like, oh, that's just a rule, a new policy or a new rule we have. And I basically was like, well, can you send over the policy and the new rule that you have? Because you put the seller through hoping that you guys would come out. She got the house ready. She was waiting for you guys and myself as well. And you guys canceled at the last minute. And of course, they couldn't showcase the new they couldn't show the new policy. They couldn't send me any documentation over in regards to new policy. So you have companies like that are starting to change things up because they're realizing that maybe there's no profit being made in certain areas or through certain type of communities per se, or where those houses are located, which is, I guess, the same thing. I kind of said the same thing again. But so they're making up these quote unquote new rules as they go to say we no longer service houses in these areas because of X, Y, and Z. All right. Hey, Miss H. Do you see a lot of properties selling that are owned by corporations, or are they just trying to unload them fast when no one can hardly afford to buy right now? So I definitely see a lot of properties that are owned by investors. So we have some that are owned by local mom and pop investors. We have some that are owned by institutional investors or corporations per se. And what's happening now is that we also have a lot of real estate agents that are, creating their own portfolios, and they're buying houses at lower cost, of course, and they're flipping and they're trying to sell them as well. So we have a lot of different things going on, which in turn is creating a nice amount of foreclosures coming in place. And some of them might just be, the loan, they took out a 1 year loan, they refinanced on the loan. Maybe they took out a second, to get things done. And what's happening is that these loans have, come due, and they might be like a 1 year loan, things like that. Or, and what's happening is that they fall into foreclosure, and then some of these investors will turn around and they'll pay those loans back, and back up. They'll go and talk to the lender, they'll do something, because a lot of them are hard money loans. But in regards to your question, I don't know, I kind of went off the beaten path, sorry. In regards to your question, I am seeing properties that are being sold in our metro Atlanta area by corporations. But I just want to put context around it, because we're seeing not only corporations but hedge funds, local investors, out-of-state investors. They're all in our market. Or are they just trying to unload them fast? And they are trying to unload them as fast as they can. What I'm noticing about the corporation investors or the institutional investors, what they're doing is they're dropping their prices. I know what they're doing is they're going to the agents, right, or the brokerages, and they're having them do a market analysis. And then what these agents are doing is they're placing them on the market at fair market value, per se, as far as other comps that they see in the area. And then if they're not seeing anybody come in to buy these houses or go under contract with these houses, they are literally cutting the prices. Like they're like dropping them 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000. I've seen some 100,000 off, 150,000 off, 250,000 off. And it's a shame, because I wanted to show you guys all this information, but the computer is acting really wonky with the internet. So I don't know if it's just, everybody maybe and their mama might be online now, because no one's at work. So I don't know. But needless to say, that is definitely what I'm seeing. And because of that, you're going to see a shift as far as in the metro Atlanta area, per se, as far as some people's equity. And you also have people that are still buying in certain pockets, because some pockets are a little isolated, because you don't have that many corporate investors in there. You don't have a lot of mom and pop investors in there. So with it being isolated, you're still seeing people that might, put a house on the market, and maybe the only house in that neighborhood, and somebody wanted to get in that neighborhood so bad, and that they're actually selling above price, above market price. So we have a lot of different things kind of going on in the metro Atlanta area. But more south of Atlanta, you're seeing some of those prices kind of trend down and soften. And when you kind of go north a little bit towards, say, like Johns Creek, maybe a little bit into Alpharetta, depending on the area, you might see the prices either staying steady, or you might see some people actually buying a little above market price. And even some parts of Sandy Springs, depending on what pocket they're in, or maybe even a little bit of Roswell as well. So, but it is taking longer to sell. It's not going quickly like it was before in our metro Atlanta area. So we are seeing a lot of things kind of happening, and especially with these investors as well. So hopefully that made sense, and it wasn't too much of a drawn out answer to your question, Ms. H. And it says, sorry about that. Let me go back here in regards to these investors. Sorry about that. So again, about the iBuyers and the independent flippers, which we kind of talked about, that's in the metro Atlanta area. Those are, the mom and pop investors, the real estate agents that are independent flippers. They're buying low and they're flipping. That's what we're seeing in metro Atlanta as well. In Charlotte, for example, they said 6.9% of all residential parcels are owned by out-of-state companies. It says nearly 3 times the national average, and representing nearly a quarter of the city's rental inventory, which is crazy. It says Atlanta, Indianapolis, Kansas City show similar patterns. It says the researchers noted that a single parcel in an urban area could represent one standalone home or a large multi-unit apartment, which we were kind of indicating. So the residential parcels could be a single family home, a multi-unit apartment complex. So they focus on concentration of corporate owned homes across the U.S. rather than specific numbers. So they're focusing on what is corporately owned in regards to their data. It says the rise of the mega investors, determining which companies own most homes is challenging. The report authors explain because a single large corporation can own thousands of properties under hundreds of different LLCs, which is true. Um, that I see it all the time, even in our MLS. Well, you'll see. Let's just take, for example, let's take Progress Residential. Progress Residential is they might go back and forth with they have so many subsidiaries of LLCs. So you'll see it might say like SFR, so single family residence, and then it might be a dash, and it might say like, I'm just gonna make up a number, 2025, one like LPP, LPVL, something, whatever. It might say something like that. And then what you'll see is that if you go to another property that might be institutional owned and it's by the same company, let's just say Progress Residential again, it might say SFR, which is the same thing, might say dash 2019, LVP, whatever they want to call it, like they kind of put it. So you'll see, like they said in the article, you'll see thousands of these LLCs underneath of one bigger company. So they have a bunch of subsidiaries per se under one umbrella. Similar to like let's say like Blackstone, right? I believe Blackstone. Similar to like Blackstone, where they'll have several subsidiaries under one LLC. So you'll always see them. And what I also noticed on the back end too, in regards to these LLCs having these different subsidiaries, is that they will actually buy each other. Like their company, like the same company will actually buy the other property, and then vice versa. And what it does is it offsets sometimes the numbers. So you'll think something sold, in actuality it didn't sell. And then on the back end, what we'll see is we'll see like a Y or whatever, and we'll see like possibly quick claim deeded. And so they're transferring the properties around. It's really interesting if you see it on the back end. Like I said, I wish I could show you guys the back end, which I had plans on doing, but the desktop computer is acting wonky. So I didn't want to, not jump on here because of that. But hopefully next time we come on here, the desktop is better and I can actually show you the game that these institutional investors are playing. And even some of these independent investors, excuse me, even some of these local flippers, they're playing the game too, where they're buying properties and they're buying it in their name, and then they're putting it in an LLC, and then they're transferring it to another LLC with a different name. And then also you might see people buy it in their name and then they transfer it into trust, and then they do. So it's a lot of stuff happening in the back end where things are changing back and forth. So like they said in this report, it's kind of hard to track it because there's so many moving parts on the back end in regards to the recording of the deeds and the transferring and all this stuff. It says prior to 2011, no single investor owned more than 1,000 single family properties anywhere in the U.S. Prior to 2011, no single investor owned more than 1,000 single family homes anywhere in the U.S. The report indicates, highlighting research from the Government Accountability Office a decade later, 32 institutional mega investors collectively own 446,000 single-family homes across the country, with the 5 largest companies holding nearly 300,000 homes combined. So, of course, 446,000, and the scheme of thing, like they said earlier, when we break it down, is about 2% as far as what these corporate investors actually own. So when you break it down, they don't own as much real estate as people think. They heavily own in certain areas. So it just depends on what state you're in, what area you're in, that you'll see that ownership increase. But when you break it down, they're saying that locally, on a local level, in every state, there are actually more mom and pop investors who own second real estate. It says these big players include publicly traded companies like American Home, for rent, which owned roughly 60,700 rental houses in 2024. Invitation Homes, which is another one, and they're large in the Metro Atlanta area, with more than 80,000 rental homes in 2023. Both companies have a strong focus on the Sunbelt region, which that's where I'm at. Okay, so it says taking action to reclaim local ownership. And then it kind of talks about how the government is trying to take action. I know there was even something when it came to Atlanta at one time where Atlanta had passed an initiative, the city of Atlanta. So that's not every part of um, Fulton County, just the city, where the mayor had passed an initiative, even for local investors coming in and doing like Airbnbs, where you couldn't have ownership than more than two. And if you had, I think you had to also live in one if you had to. I don't know if that's still going on. I have to dive back into that information just to see if that's still kind of playing out. But it's just different policies, and then there's also our senator in Georgia. I forget his name. I should know that, right? Our senators started to go down and try to figure out how they can stop so many institutional investors coming in and owning so many single family houses. So it says right here, in the Twin Cities, for example, nonprofits were able to purchase. So they're talking about nonprofits also being able to purchase. Nonprofits were able to purchase 345 homes from investment fund Pretium partners before they hit the market. And I believe Pertium, I think I'm saying it right. I'm trying to remember what company this was, because I'm trying to remember what company it was. I gotta remember what company it is, because they have a certain management company that I remember. I feel like it's Tricon. I don't know. I could be wrong. Another policy effort gaining momentum is offering tenants or non profits the right of first refusal when a landlord is preparing to sell. Such initiatives have been passed or expanded, in Atlanta and Chicago in recent years. So they're saying basically, if a local investor, mom and pop investor, or possibly a corporation investor decide they're going to sell their house, they're saying that they should give whoever's currently renting that property first refusal, meaning that they come to them first and say, "Hey, we're about to sell this property. Are you interested in possibly purchasing the property?" And then if they say yes, then they're supposed to, allow them to go that route as far as having those tenants purchase the property. If not, then they're able to go about selling that property. Ms. H said, I was wondering why when I see a property and then it's gone fast. I was like, I didn't even know it sold. It wasn't on the market one day, then gone. No chance to even look at it. Yeah, he said, thanks for explaining that part, Clark. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so that's what they do a lot. Like I said, down here in the Metro Atlanta area, well, I'm not there right now, but in the Metro Atlanta area, they do that a lot, where these companies are on the back end, they're trading. Even there's a lot of like back in trading, even some stuff that never even hit the market at all. Of course, you got off market stuff going on where these companies will literally go. They know that one company is liquidating their real estate, which we saw back in 2023 and 2024 in the Metro Atlanta area. It was a management company called Excalibur. They held a lot of, I did a live about this, or a video about this. I think it was Star, I'm trying to remember the name, but like Star Trust or something Trust, wherever. But anyway, they had a lot of properties under Excalibur management, and they decided to liquidate their portfolio. And with them liquidating their portfolio, they sold some of their properties. Well, most of their properties kind of went to Invitation Homes. And when they sold to Invitation Homes, they either they put Invitation Home, they either put them up on the market to sell, liquidated some of them into Invitation Homes. Invitation Homes sold some of the properties on the market as well, or they turned around and they rent certain properties. So some of the properties that might already had renters in place, they might have sent them a letter. And the only reason why I know more about this is because I helped a person get into a rental property, who actually a month later, Invitation Homes took over the property that was under Excalibur management. And they told me, about it. And so that's what made me actually go down a rabbit hole and start like looking into the liquidation, the reorganizing, understanding what's going on because of that. And I just wanted to make sure that with them being under Invitation Homes, that their lease was still being satisfied correctly, and that they did get official notice and different things like that. So, all right. So that's about the institutional investors reorganizing, what's going on in regards to that. The next thing we kind of want to jump into, hopefully that made sense, is we want to jump into let's jump into this Trump conversation real quick. And so I'm just going to play the sound bite. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to hear it, and then we'll talk about it. So I'm going to put the phone as close to my speaker as possible.
Considering a national emergency over housing?
I'm looking at it.
What would that look like?
There's two thoughts on housing. You have a lot of people have housing that because we have such a strong time and such a strong market there, houses are very valuable. It's a big part of their net worth, their house. I don't want to knock those numbers down because I want them to continue to have a big value for their house. At the same time, I want to make it possible for young people out there and other people to buy housing in a way that at conflict. In other words, you create a lot of housing all of a sudden, and it drives the housing prices down. So I want to take care of the people that have houses that have a value to the house that they never thought possible, that have sort of made them wealthy and happy, and especially in their later years. Got to be careful with that. I want to keep them up. At the same time, I want to make it possible for people to go buy houses.
All right, so that was a clip of Donald Trump talking about the housing market, where we're currently at as far as the equity. Hopefully, you heard the sound clip. So basically, he's talking about how the equity is at all-time high in people's housing right now, which we know it reached the all-time high really in 2022. That peak of 2022 up to that 2023 thing, and then it started to slowly, depending on where you're at again, decline or soften or stabilize. Okay, you heard it fine, Miss H? Okay, good. I'm glad you heard it fine. And so, of course, as we all know, Trump likes to contradict his speaking. And also, Trump likes to see what benefits him. And so when I heard him talk about this as far as homeownership, the equity, of course, as a realtor and as, someone who owns and know people who own, you want to make sure that the equity does not. I thought my phone was about to go off. You want to make sure, of course, their equity does not get stripped, right? However, the problem is, like I keep saying to people, if houses keep going up in prices, there will be no one to be able to buy the house in the future. We have to be mindful that, yes, we are living in a capitalist country, right? And people can hopefully throughout the years be able to make as much money as they want without capping, depending on what field they're in, right? However, we have to understand too that everyone's not going to reach those levels. No matter how hard you work, no matter what your background is, no matter the time and the commitment and the energy you put into it, you're not going to be able to reach that level that you might ultimately feel like you should reach, right? And because of that, we have to be mindful that if houses continue to keep going up, and if they have an entry-level house in some of these cities, which I'm not in cities like New York, or I'm not in a city like California, sorry, those are states. Sorry, I'm not in a state like New York. I'm not in a state like California. I'm not. I don't live in a state like Washington D.C., where some of these entry-level home prices are $1 million. And yes, people can say, well, people make a little bit more money in those areas. Yes, they make a little bit more money, but $1 million for an entry-level house, that's ridiculous. And I know a lot of homeowners don't like when I say this, especially people who bought their homes a long time ago. It's okay if we see a softening of home prices, because ultimately, prior to 2019, after that great financial crisis where prices, crashed, they dipped down, people that were on the sidelines, they were able to jump in the market who had money, they bought very low, and now they are seeing an exorbitant or a big per se amount of equity in their homes come 2017, 18, 2019. And in 2020, 2021, really, it soared into 2022, 2023. So if you turned around and you had a house that you might have bought, let's say, during that great financial crisis for $50,000, depending on where you live at, and now the house is valued at $300,000, it's okay if it catches back up to the normal amount, where over time, if you really look at the charts of housing and the trending and the actual cycle of equity, that $300,000 house should only be about maybe 200,000 or maybe 250. So it's okay if the prices go from 300,000 to 250, because you still will walk away with some type of equity if you bought the house for $50,000. The problem what's happening now is that everybody who bought a house for $50,000 wants to walk away with six figures in their pocket. And I understand why they want to do that, because they're like, okay, well, if I sell now because other prices are so high, how would I be able to go and roll this money over to buy another house if I'm not making enough money to put down on said house? And I know some people that are baby boomers or of an older generation, even Gen Z, Gen Xers, are like, well, I just want to be able to move from one house to another house and I have a mortgage. I get it. However, again, it's okay if that doesn't happen and you walk away with still, still some equity in your pocket, if that's making any sense. Ms. H said, if wages don't keep up with prices, buying a house, even for younger people, will not be able to purchase. Something will have to change drastically to make it affordable. Exactly, Ms. H. And that's the thing. And so because income, even though they're saying that, oh, the income is keeping up, with today's prices and inflation, it's really not. Um, they make it seem like it, but when you've actually run the numbers, so this, I had a conversation with a friend the other day, probably like a week or so ago, and we were just talking about just like the state minimum wage in Georgia compared to the federal wage in Georgia. So in Georgia, the state minimum wage is about $5.15, and I think I showed this before on a live as far as what the state minimum wages was for different states around America. That has not risen in a lot of years. Let me see how long it's been since that. Let me hold on real quick. How long has it been? I'm gonna speak into it. How long has it been since the Georgia state minimum wage was risen? I don't know if I'm saying it right. Sorry, that might not make no sense. I was like, so it says that the minimum wage in Georgia, and everybody should look into what your state minimum wage is. It's been there for 20 years. So for 20 years, it's at $5.15. Yes, you have the federal minimum wage of $7.25. But every job, every corporation, I think, is a certain thing where all of them don't have to uphold to that $7.25. So if a house is $500,000 and I want to buy a house and I'm only making $5.15 an hour, it's not keeping up. You know, typically what happens, the home prices, the stores, any type of items you buy, whatever, they typically go hand in hand with the minimum, the minimum wage per se in the state you live in, the city you live in. In the metropolitan area of Atlanta and in some of these other areas, there's so many people migrating into this area from different parts of the country that have a lot of money and they're doing remote from home work, that the prices have risen drastically. So somebody who is from New York who has an at-home job and they're making $250,000 or $300,000 a year, or from California and vice versa, compared to someone that is born and raised in Metro Atlanta area, someone who works a regular 9 to 5. I even had a conversation too last week with a teacher. Regular 9 to 5 job, a teacher, 3 years ago was only approved for about $150,000. Couldn't buy anything. Wants to buy but can't buy anything. So it's not keeping up. I'm like, I'm sorry to go on a rant. I'm not going on a rant. I just feel so passionate about this because the thing about my ultimate goal when it comes to real estate, even though it is, to help people get in, accomplish their real estate goals, get in and out of their houses successfully. But ultimately, I am looking at the future generations, and I'm looking at the current generation to the past generations in the future, right? Of course, I want the past generation to be able to live in their house for the rest of their life if they can get out of the house. So what I'm seeing now happening is that people are actually getting foreclosed on by property taxes. The older people. It was an article I wanted to pull up here, but I won't be able to, about a older lady. I think she had dementia, at about 90 years old. Her property taxes went up to $3,500 a year. She couldn't afford to pay it. They sold her house at the courthouse steps, foreclosure. An investor came, took her out of her house. I've seen this happen plenty of times. And so you want to protect the past generations, but you also want to protect the future generations. But if we don't put some type of I don't want to say regulation in place, but some type of barricade, some things we have to put something in place, right? And I feel like what's happening now, and it's been happening for years in America and all over the world, everybody's into an individual spirit, individualism, and everybody's worried about, well, what about me? Like when I talk to certain people, certain realtors, certain homeowners, well, what about me? What about my equity? I don't want this to happen to me. What about me? And it's like, well, what about all of us? Not only what about you, but what about all of us, right? So I don't know. Now, if older family members co-sign to help or buy with a family member, that will help the younger family member to own something. Will help. Yeah, like the older members can definitely do that as well. We're seeing it happen. Multi-generational living, of course, we're seeing that happen in regards to that. And what Trump was trying to say in that video that we just played was, like I said, he was trying to say protect the older people who amass so much equity, but then also he's contradicting himself by like, we need to make sure the younger people can afford housing. So it's like, well, it has to play hand in hand, right? And also when it comes to, like, again, when it comes to the older people, like you said, they can family members, they can co-sign. You can do a multi-generational living. You can have young people with older people. You can have sisters and brothers. You can have, mom and dad. You can have roommates. All these different things. As far as friendships, that's what people are doing now in this generation, multi-generational living. Um, However, you do have some people that want to be able to feel like they can do it by themselves, right? They want to feel like, excuse me, they want to feel like, I went to college, or even if I didn't go to college, I went to a trade school, or whatever I decided to do, went right into work, the workforce. I worked my butt off. I've saved a certain amount of money, and they want to feel a sense of accomplishment, like this is something I was able to do. It doesn't mean that they don't want the help, but if they can do it themselves, they'll want to do it. Like, I think a lot of people put this narrative on younger generations too, that they're lazy, millennials, Gen Zers, and a lot of them are not lazy. A lot of them are like, how can I get into this? How can I afford to be in a race that costs too much money for me to jump in? I think people. Sorry, I don't know if you guys can hear this, but somebody's doing fireworks now. I don't know. I might have to close my window. It's a bunch of fireworks. Okay. Let me know if you can hear that. It's a bunch of fireworks going off now. Somebody decided that they want to do fireworks tonight. So yeah, so a lot of people, a lot of young people just want to get into the race, and they just can't, just because it's harder to do nowadays. So the next topic we are going to talk about. So hopefully that makes sense. I don't know if I was making sense. So let me know if I'm making sense. I feel like I go from like housing to like political to like, economy to, but I just want to, because it all goes hand in hand, right? As you just look into the economy, you just talk to people, you have conversations, and because I'm having so many of these conversations so much, I'm talking to people so much about it, that I'm seeing a same type of trend, the same type of situation, the same isms per se. All right, so now let's jump into. Let me see. Sorry, Miss H. I have watched a few people online say they wanted to do it for themselves and find out it was way harder for them after all. They let the home go back. It's hard, Clark, for a lot of people. Yes, it is hard. It's definitely hard. Um, and this is what makes me sad, because if you guys, of course, saw the last live, or we just saw the video that I clipped from the last live in regards to foreclosures, that the interesting thing is, as you guys know, this is not even touching on younger people right now, but the older millennial in their 40s, they are saying now, of course, that the average home buyer is in their 40s. And with the average home buyer being in their 40s, what I'm noticing in the metro Atlanta area, and again, it's specific to the area. Hey, what's going on, David? I'm sorry I missed you yesterday. Um, I was I was like, oh shoot. I was about to click, when I clicked on my YouTube, I was like, oh shoot, I just missed David. But Sorry, I was out doing some shopping, so I apologize. I'm so sorry. But but yeah. So in regards to this, Miss H, when it comes to the younger people wanting to do it by themselves, and it's harder, they said that the average homeowner is about 40 years old now, and with the average homeowner being about 40 years old, what I'm noticing is that in the Metro Atlanta area again, the ones that are experiencing having to give their homes back to the bank or that are possibly foreclosing, well, not possibly, they are foreclosing because I laid it out. They are actually in their 40s. So it's like they bought the house in 2023, 2022, and they can't sustain it because the property taxes. So they bought it possibly at 40, 41, and they're foreclosing at 43, 44. I'm seeing a trend in the Metro Atlanta area that those foreclosures are between ages 40 to 55. So with the first time home buyer now, or the medium home buyer per se, however they stated it, being 40 years old, well, not the medium home buyer, sorry. Yeah, the medium home buyer is 40. Being 40 years old, these are the same people that are foreclosing right now in the Metro Atlanta area. So kind of going back, I don't know, that's not really on par with what you said, Miss H, but kind of going back in the sense of younger people wanting to do it by themselves and having that sense of pride to be able to own something, to say they did it by themselves, whether it be a home, whether it be a car. It is harder. This economy is harder. Prices are inflated. And it's just not in housing, it's in the cars, it's in the gas, it's in the food, it's even in renting now. um so yeah, it's very sad. It's sad for a lot of people. And like I said, everything goes hand in hand, whether we're talking real estate, whether we're talking about what's happening in the economy. We don't get too political, but I'm not scared to get political. So, I'm okay with having conversations around the politics of what's happening in our country right now. And it's not just in the United States of America, it's all over the world. We just don't have the eyesight right now on those other spaces and those other places. But a lot of these younger generations are feeling, they're feeling the burn, and it's not because they're lazy. It's just really harder right now to get in the race at a costlier price. David said that's sad. Yeah, it's really sad, David, when I'm looking at I'm breaking down these people when I'm going in the system and I'm seeing these foreclosures and actually putting it hand in hand. And I'm like, this is crazy. I'm like, these are the same people that they're saying these are buying these houses. This is the age range in which these people are buying, that they're saying this is the new, uh, age range of a home buyer. And those are also the same people that are foreclosing 3 years or 4 years down the line, which is crazy. Um, David said after the foreclosure, they are setback years. Exactly, they're setback years. And some people, what they're doing too. What I'm noticing is that the people that are foreclosing, they're also filing bankruptcies. So they're like, hey, I got nothing to lose. The credit is already messed up because I'm already late with my mortgage payments. I have nothing to lose. I might as well file bankruptcy now. So they're filing bankruptcies. I'm seeing the judgments on the end. Um, and of course, when you call these people, you can't say, "Hey, I'm calling you because I noticed that you're in foreclosure and you filed bankruptcy and you have a lien, and your foreclosure might have came from your HOA because you failed to pay your HOA dues in the last 2 years, or maybe your foreclosure might have came from failing to pay your mortgage because I see that the loan is due and everything." And like, of course, I see all that on the back end. But when I call these people, I call them to try to ask them, do they need any help in the sense of real estate? And a lot of them, because this is something that they put their money into. This is something that they purchased that they don't want to give up the house. So some of them are just like, no, I'm okay. I don't need no help. I'm all right. And it's really just calling them and ask them like, hey, did you talk to your loan provider, your servicer per se? What did they say? Did they allow you to possibly modify the loan? If you can't modify a loan because you already did too many modifications, what other routes are you looking to take? There are some programs out here that will relieve you and pay your mortgage to make it current per se. So if you miss 6 months, you could possibly apply for some programs, local programs that will help you bring that mortgage current. Or if you feel like it's best for you that you just don't want to, stay in this house no more, you feel like this is a weight on you that you're ready to get out of. If you need help or assistance as far as trying to figure out, if you might have enough equity to get out without having bringing any money to the closing table. Because some of these people that bought 2022, 2023, some of them are underwater because in the Metro Atlanta area, again, I gotta specify this because it's not in every area, and I don't want people to jump in my comments and beat me up or send me emails and beat me up in the emails like they be doing. But yeah, but it's not in the Metro Atlanta area. That's what I'm seeing. So, but yeah, but I reach out to these people, and like I said, everyone's going through a hard time right now. No one's alone, whether you're rich or whether you're just an average American. We all going through something. So, but some people will take interest, and some people will just like, no, I'm okay. We walk through the world. Like I said to one of my colleagues one time, when with a lot of stuff going on in the back end, we walk through the world with a smile on our face, and we just walk in. When somebody say, hey, how you doing today? You say, I'm doing good, I'm okay. And in reality, you're not doing good, you're not okay. But we don't want to put so much of that weight on another human being that we like, we're okay. And you smile, you go about your day. But I told my colleague when they asked me, I was like, no, I'm just walking through the world like everybody else, like a zombie, and I'm not okay. But we just gonna smile to get through it, because that's what people do, unfortunately. David said, what do you think is the cause? Where were they stretched too far to buy in the first place? Insurance, divorce. So what I'm noticing was when people do open up to me, because a lot of people don't, they just say, oh, I don't want to, I'm good, I'm okay. But when the people do have a conversation with me, I know one person said that their property taxes, of course, increased. And with them going from a $2,300 a month mortgage to a $3,000 a month mortgage, they couldn't afford it. So the property taxes increased. That was a problem. The insurance, it increased, but it wasn't as much of it. I feel like a lot of them were really talking about the property taxes. And of course, some of them did stretch themselves too thin during the pandemic. Some people had extra jobs that they no longer can account for income wise. And so with them with those jobs being gone, or possibly them being laid off of their bigger job that paid the most money, they can't afford the mortgage no more. If they bought a new construction, as we know, David, those property taxes that increase after a year, if people fail to file, if every state might not have one, but if you fail to file a homestead exemption, you're seeing those taxes rise as well. So there's a multiple different things happening. I did call somebody who actually was going through a divorce. But I called him on the phone, and he was like, I'm going through a divorce. And he just hung up the phone. I'm like, okay. He's like, yeah, I'm selling my property. I'm going through a divorce. Click. I was like, oh, okay. Well, and so I didn't call back because I was like, there's no point in me calling back, because if you wanted to have a conversation with me, you would have one. So I don't call back. If people hang up on me, I just let it go, because I tell people, I'm not here to sell you. I'm not here to sell you. I'm here to help you. Whether you want my help or not, whether you want to have a conversation with me or not in regards to real estate, that's why I'm here. I've never been a salesy person. When I used to live in California, and I moved out in California in the midst of the great financial crisis, which I didn't know was a great financial crisis happening. At the time, I was 24 years old. I feel like when you're younger, in your early 20s, you're just moving through life, right? No care in the world. You don't really know what's going on. You're not keeping up with the economy. You don't really care what's going on, right? You're young, you're dumb, and as they always say, you're full of boop. But and so at that time, I actually didn't realize we were going through a great financial crisis. I was in LA, and I actually end up working for a sales company that was selling roofs and gutters to people's houses. And I got hired to sell roof and gutters to people's houses. And I was calling. It was me. I was in a small room. It was me, and it was another young lady who happened to tell me that she just got out of jail. So she was like, "I just got out of jail. I was in a halfway house." I'm like, "Oh, okay, great." But no judgment, because we all people. So and we were, I was calling people on the phone, and again, not realizing what's happening at this time. And everybody was, I would call and I'm like, are you interested in a new roof or are you interested in gutters? And they'd be like, no, I'm not interested in it. And I would just hang up. Like, I'm not like, I wasn't trying to convince nobody. I was like, baby, if you don't want it, I ain't trying to convince you because that's not what I do for a living. I don't convince people to do stuff. And so within 4 days, because I guess I wasn't convincing nobody to buy nothing. The owner of the company came to me on the fourth day at the job, and he was like, Devon, he was like, if you don't get nobody to buy a gutter or do some type of roof replacement, he's like, I'm gonna have to let you go. And so the next day I woke up in my bed and I just called. I was like, well, I quit. You can just let me go. Give me my little 4 day paycheck. Because baby, I can't. I can't do it. I was like, that's just not who I am. I'm just a person. I really ultimately my goal is to help people. That's all. Help them in the house, out of house. That's all. Educate them, give them as much knowledge as possible as they can need when it comes to real estate, and that's all. So sorry about that tangent. Let's head over real quick into okay. So we did Trump, what he talked about. We talked about investors reorganizing. David said, at least she was working. Cold calling is hard. Yeah, baby, she was working. When I tell you she was working, oh, here go these fireworks again. She was working and she was getting people. And she told me when the boss came in, he said he was gonna let me go. She told me, she's like, well, you could go down the street to this other company. They do the same thing. She's like, it's a bunch of people who just got the halfway house. We all go between these companies or whatever. I was like, no, I was like, I think I'm good with selling gutters and roofs because this ain't my ministry. I was like, I'm not here to sell nobody. I was like, ultimately, it would be the whole thing of if I call you on the phone in regards to a roof or a gutter, which I can't see really, it would be like me calling to make sure, like, if your roof is actually a hole in the roof or if it's a saggy roof or if the gutter is, um, jacked up and the water is not coming down the right way or whatever on the side of your house, then I want to educate you about what it could do, in regards to the damage of the house, if you try to go sell it in the long run, how, that's going to take away the value of the house. So, yeah, so just calling people on the phone and just trying to get them to buy gutters and roofs just wasn't my ministry. I'm about educating people and helping people. And but she was killing it. She was killing it, and she was a good person. I wonder what happened to her. She was really cool, really cool. All right, let's jump into. I don't know if you guys can hear these fireworks. Like, it's fire. These people next door to our house is lighting up fireworks. So let's jump into real quick in regards to. Let me see the Zillow. Because I did say Zillow lawsuit. So let me do a Zillow lawsuit real quick. And hold on, let me see what I have here for Zillow lawsuit. Okay. So with Zillow lawsuit, as you guys know, if you don't know, okay, you said you can't hear it. Okay, good. Because they've been going off consistently like all right, good. Okay, so as you guys know, Zillow has been through a multiple amount of lawsuits this year going into 2026. And so if you guys don't know, I'm not in Chicago, so if you guys might want to, reach out or follow a channel of a realtor that's based in Chicago. But right now, Zillow seeks direct. What they're doing is they're seeking. We can hear you. Okay, you can hear me just fine. Cool. Thank you, David. He said we can hear you just fine. Cool. Perfect. Ms. H said, it don't bother me. I can hear it at times. No worries. Okay. All right, cool. Yeah, I'm like, I have my window open because it's with the lights on and everything. I get hot. So I'm like, great. They want to do the fireworks and my window's open. But hey. So Zillow, it says seeks direct brokerage feeds amid standoff with the Chicago MLS. So right now, Zillow is in a standoff with the Chicago MLS. It says the standoff between Chicago's MLS and Zillow is escalating as Zillow looks prepared to move forward with blocking private listings from its websites. In an email to subscribers on Saturday, the Chicago area's MLS operator Midwest Real Estate Data said that Zillow has been contacting brokerages asking for direct. Oh, here we go again with this iPad. How it flips over. And then it flips. It always does this when I'm on this iPad. Sorry about that. Why? David said, my hearing is not as sharp. Okay. Okay. It says the Zillow has been contacting brokerages asking for direct listing feeds and warning that Zillow's access to local listings could be disrupted in early January. Zillow is also allegedly threatening to contact sellers about potential disruption, the email said. So I don't know the full ins and outs of this, but just from reading some of this, that it seems like Zillow is now going to be contacting these sellers. How is that possible? And so this is what I'm mindful of, right? If you guys don't know, Zillow owns Dotloop. Some brokerages like our brokerage, which I don't really care for it, but they use it through my brokerage. They use Dotloop. And with them using Dotloop, Zillow owns Dotloop. And so they actually can see our contracts, our clients' information, their phone numbers, their address, and everything because they have access to their they have access to their prioritize. I forget how to say it. I'm saying it. I know what I'm trying to say, but I can't say it. But anyway, they have access to our data through that dot loop system. I know some brokerages use like DocuSign and all that stuff like that. But so I'm like, are they going to be able to get these sellers' information through like the dot loop? Because their contracts get scanned in through those into the dot loop, and literally the client's information is there, the closing dates is there, the everything is there. It says Zillow is asking brokerages to sign multi-year agreements for direct listing feeds, claim the MRED claim, which is the Chicago MLS, which would eliminate the need for Zillow to receive listing data in the region from the MLS. So it says Zillow is asking brokerages to sign multi-year agreements for direct listing feeds. That's what the Chicago MLS is saying, which would eliminate the need for Zillow to receive listing data in the region from the MLS. Tension is rising in the months-long stalemate between the MLS and the national home search giant MRED's private listing network, which allows sellers to show listings to agents in the MRED's market and their clients, but not to the broader market. So broader public, sorry. So again, this is the thing where Zillow is trying to say, hey, once you get a listing and you get a contract, that you have 24 hours basically to put it on their system, allowing for the broader audience to see it. However, some of these brokerages, and I guess this MLS, according to this Yahoo Finance article, is saying that they want to be able to have exclusivity to the listing for a couple of days to be on the private side per se, prior to having it blasted out to the broader public right away. And Zillow's like, no, you need to blast it out the next day. And so I do go back and forth with this in the sense of this argument, because I do agree that in order to, you as a seller, you would hopefully want to have your home seen by so many eyeballs, right? Millions and millions of people that utilize Zillow. However, I do understand on the other side where it's like, if I have a seller that's possibly, let's say they're a professional basketball player, maybe they're a billionaire, maybe they're Elon Musk, I don't know, and even though they typically put their stuff in trusts or LLCs or something, but maybe they don't want their property to be seen by a mass audience. So it's almost like a sense of privacy on one end, but also I understand the other side. However, I do kind of sometimes fight against Zillow having so much access to our MLS, in the sense of they have all our data. They have all our data, and then I feel like, and I could be wrong, this is just my opinion. I feel like the MLS is getting a kickback or something from Zillow. like the Zillow, this IDX technology that outsources to other platforms, Realtor.com, whatever. I feel like they're getting like some type of kickback, and I could be wrong. This is just me, my conspiracy head tingling head right now. But and then in turn they're allowing them to access all our data. But I get very weary, like I said, with Zillow owning so much of these entities, the dot loops, the Zillow, the their CRM system, all these different things, the mortgage stuff, all this stuff. And I know there's Zillow's argument too is like, well, Redfin is doing something similar, you know. However, I don't want everything to become like a monopoly where you get so big that it's hard for other people to crack the space. You get what I'm saying? I don't know if that makes sense. Ms. A said, what would be the point to contact the sellers, I guess you're saying, to stop them from selling their homes or what? And that's the thing that I'm trying to figure out too with this article, like with them saying that they're going to contact the sellers. I'm like, why are you contacting the sellers? So I'm guessing they're going to contact the sellers just from this article from Yahoo Finance in the sense of saying like, hey, you know that this MLS is trying to make your listing private, and you're not going to have a broad audience seeing your listing. So you need to make sure they put it make sure when they put it on the MLS that it gets aggregated to Zillow. I'm guessing that's why they would contact the sellers. Because other than that, I don't know why they're reaching out to someone else's clients. That it's not your client. Like you haven't had a conversation with them. You have no contractual agreement with them. So why are you reaching out to them? I don't know that. And this is what I said in regards to Zillow. This is where them overstepping, and this is where we got to be cautious, especially in real estate. And I know the consumer is like, yes, Zillow, take these agents down, take these brokerages down. And I'm like, everything is a domino effect. I don't think people realize the way things are set up in America, and that's why it's so hard to change some things that even though I wish would be changed as well, but it creates a domino effect because it's been in place for so many years that when you start taking stuff apart, almost like a car, you start taking different things out, pieces and undoing a car, it starts to break down slowly but surely. And now you're saying like, well, how do I replace it? How do I fix it? So I don't know. To stop them from selling their homes or what, or charge a price to use their services. Yeah, they definitely gonna try to charge a price to use their services. They already charge agents, as you guys might know, from watching certain real estate videos on YouTube or something that Zillow, and they do have a lawsuit about this. Zillow does charge agents about they charge them off the top of 40% fee in regards to when they use their premier agents programs and all these things, and then also brokerages and agents pay Zillow to have certain zip codes so that when you go and you click contact agent or whatever, you don't go directly to listing agent, you go to a person who paid for those Zillow leads. Hey, what's going on, Lauren? Merry Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas Eve again to everybody who's just joining. If you are joining, I appreciate you guys coming on. Just felt like I would pop on and just talk some real estate. So in regards to that, it says, while Zillow hasn't started enforcing its listing rules in Chicago, its direct appeal to brokerages shows it's preparing for possibility of losing access to the MREDS's listings. So they're basically, it looks like they're Chicago, the MLS Chicago, the MRED is they're fighting, and Zillow might lose direct access, according to Yahoo Finance, to their listings. So the frequently asked questions section of Zillow's listing access standard states it will accept a direct broker feed of listings in the event the MLS doesn't spend an IDX, which we were talking about, the IDX or the VOW feed with all coming soon delayed marketing or active listings. In its email to subscribers, the MRED said it had not given Zillow any notice of policy violations that would merit losing access to the MLS data. It says, unless Zillow anticipates violating MRD policy, we do not understand why the claim service will be interrupted in January. So, oh, thank you, David. I appreciate it. Merry Christmas. Oh, wow. That's so nice. Thank you, David. I appreciate it. You always support. I really appreciate you. And if you guys don't know, David is also a real estate agent in the Omaha, Nebraska area. With me being on my iPad, I can't share no screens. And I wish I could because I love sharing your channel. I love watching your channel. Always great information on David's channel. Always great people that he has coming on, that he has discussion with, talks and everything. And I'm trying to be like David. I'm trying to be like David. But I appreciate you, David. Thank you. Merry Christmas to you as well. Hopefully it's not too cold and snowy over there in Omaha, Nebraska. In Jersey, the weather is forecasted to come and because I'm in Jersey right now, you guys. Sorry. It's forecasted to come in Friday, so right after Christmas, as far as snow, sleet, rain, and everything. But I appreciate you, David. Thank you. I'm like, I can't believe it. No, I appreciate it. um, it says Miss H said, he said I have to run. All right, I have to run. Keep up the great work. All right, have a good night. Have a wonderful night, and again, Merry Christmas, and hopefully you and your family have a blessed Christmas as well. Appreciate you. Miss H said, "Oh yeah, sorry you guys. Don't forget to hit the like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you're new to the channel. And if you feel like this information makes sense and you need to share with other people, don't forget to hit the share button and share the information as well. I appreciate everybody as this channel grows slowly but surely. I appreciate everybody that tunes in. I appreciate everybody that watches any videos that I upload. Like Miss H said, she wants to kind of see some more housing tour videos, so I'm going to give you some of that. I'm thinking about, since I'm up here in Jersey, I saw a new community being built, and I don't know if they're going to allow me to go in and actually film a house, but I might put some houses if I can get into them after Christmas. I might try to do like a tour of some of the houses up here in Jersey. Since I'm here, I've been here, so I might as well try to do that, and then hopefully I can get on the channel for you, Miss H, as well. Okay. So Miss H said, if that's happening in Chicago, do you think it will be nationwide later? And so this is the thing that I was wondering too, Miss H, in regards to this whole battling with Chicago. I was like, if this happens in Chicago, and of course I gotta kind of get into the nitty gritty of this whole particular lawsuit and what's happening. So I gotta actually like read the lawsuit in depth to make sure my understandings is clear in regards to the MLS blocking Zillow from having access to certain listings, because I don't know if it's the majority of all listings or if it's just a certain amount of listings. But if this was to happen, this could be very interesting if they win this in court and they create that blockage of the MLS and other states follow suit. We might be going back, which is so crazy because they always say history repeats itself. We might be going back to the time where you had to really go to a broker or a brokerage or a realtor to actually get access to what's happening in regards to real estate with houses coming to the market, being priced on the market, and houses that you might not be able to see right now that you see on Zillow, right? So it's going to be very interesting, Ms. H, if this was to take place, and if other states started to follow that. And I don't know if a lot of people might not like it. But like I said, I'm a fan of being able to hold something close to our profession, because every profession that you're in, right? Everyone doesn't give access their whole, like, all their information to everybody to consume. Every profession keeps some of that stuff close to them, right? And I feel like real estate, because a lot of it is a money situation, that they're giving so much access to stuff nowadays, which is great on the sense of the consumer, because you do want to see what's going on. But then also Zillow sometimes messes up because they give so much access, and some of the information is actually not really, it's not really forthcoming, and it's not really all accurate. And so you get misinformation even when people go onto Zillow right now and like say, like, whether it be a estimate or just saying how much their monthly mortgage could possibly be, right? People might go to Zillow and they'll be like, oh, it says if I buy this house for $300,000, my monthly mortgage is $1,500 a month. But you have to really dig in and read the context. You got to put 20% down. You have to have a certain debt to income ratio. You have a certain credit score. You have like all these overlays that are in place to dictate how much you make, how much your monthly estimate could be. And so it's not really forthcoming with all the information right up front. You got to dig deeper to get that information. If you get what I'm saying. Clark, if they want them to sell and the people see them, they will slow you to share and film them. Maybe say allow you to. Since she said they will let you film them to show. Yeah, I'm like, hopefully I see them being built over in, because I'm in South Jersey, if anybody doesn't know. And so the Cherry Hill area, they've been building. I saw this new community. I'm like, oh wow. I'm like, I don't see when I'm like in Jersey, I don't see that many like new like single family home communities. You see more of like, multi-family living, apartment living. So I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. I was like, maybe I'll go in there. I keep my realtor name tag in my car. So what I'll do is I'll just put my name tag on and I'll walk up to the sales office and I'll see if they'll let me film some. All right, so we hit the Zillow suit. We hit Trump talks stuff about the housing market. We did the investor reorganizing what's going on with these institutional investors. Again, they are specific to your area. And we're going to talk one last thing, and I'm going to let you guys go so you can enjoy your holidays. And the last thing is about, and that's why we got the and more. The last thing is about Lennar. So if you guys don't know, Lennar is one of the is a big home builder outside of course D.R. Horton and several other home builders. But their earnings report showed that they actually lost. Well, I don't want to say lost. The sales prices dropped, meaning that they lost some money per se, if I'm saying it correct. So let's read real quick what this says. It says home builder, and this is from Realtor.com. It says home builder Lennar cuts prices by 10% as CEO admits buyers face an affordability crisis, which we have been screaming from the rooftop that the affordability crisis is ridiculous. It says home buyer Lennar says it's cut the average price of its homes 10% last quarter amid weak demand for home buyers struggling with affordability and about the economy. In the quarterly earnings report Tuesday, Lennar revealed its average sales price was $386,000 for homes delivered in the 3 months that ended in November. That's down $430,000 in the same period last year. A price cut of $44,000. Says Lennar said the price cuts were primarily due to an increased use of sales incentives offered to buy home buyers, which the company used to boost home deliveries by 4% year over year, despite ongoing weakness in the housing market. It says to address continued market declines, we maintain approximately 14% in incentives and price adjustments, while continuing to focus on volume, said CEO Stuart Miller. While affordability and consumer confidence have remained challenging as interest rates moderate, we have focused on adapting to a new normal as the market finds its footing. So basically, they say, hey, what's going on? Who is this? MHOA? You didn't change your name to Code Taxi Taxes? I don't know if I'm saying it right. What's going on? Merry Christmas. I believe I think because I see the same. I don't know if I said your name right. I see the same type of symbol. Is it Clark? Is that you? Merry Christmas, Clark. Yes, Merry. It is me. It's me on Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to everybody. I popped up here on Christmas Eve. I was hoping like if I popped on, he said MHOA is my evil twin. Is it like well no, that's not Austin Powers. We'll say Austin Powers, he's like Dr. Evil, but I don't think that's an evil twin. But that's funny. Yeah, I popped up on here. I was like, maybe I'll come on people wrapping Christmas presents. Maybe they want to listen to me talk real estate. So in regards to like this Lennar situation, when it comes to the adjusting and losing per se, their earnings report saying that they've lost some money in regards to the incentives, those interest rates buy downs. Instead of cutting the price, they just decided to do the incentives. And he said as in co-op. Okay. Co-op. So are you oh, sorry y'all. We also have deers in our backyard. So I'm like they're outside eating right now. I'm like these deers like yesterday night. I'm sorry, I'm going off topic. Yesterday night when I came home, it was like 6 deers outside eating. I was trying to take a video, but I couldn't really pinpoint it. And then every time I opened the window up, they were like looking, so I couldn't really get them. But I think they're outside right now because I can hear them moving. So let me circle back around. Sorry. In regards to Lennar, instead of them adjusting the prices down, they figured they would give these incentives. And with these incentives, they were buying down interest rates. So some of these interest rates, when I talked to one of my lender partners, they were like, and then I also talked to one of the sales agents in one of these new construction homes. They were like, they basically invested $60,000 into buying the interest rate down to say from at the time it was about close to 7%, a 7 interest rate, and they brought it down to like a 4 or a 3, and they said they invested about $60,000 off of the top. And then on top of that, they were given also incentives of like $10,000, $20,000 of home of down payment assistance per se. So when you take $60,000 and $10,000, 70,000, 80,000, they are losing. They're actually losing. Instead of them bringing the price point of the house down, they rather give the incentives on the back end, because what happened basically is that when new construction is built, typically the first house starts how they kind of go. It's like a roller coaster. The first house starts low. So let's say the community, let's say you look at a new community, it's like, oh, townhouses starting in the high $200,000 price point or something, right? So you'll see it come in at that mid to low or high, or right at that high 200,000 price point, and say somebody entered at like say 270, and then once people start to buy through a phases or whatever, it'll say, okay, these 10 been bought, and the next 10 will be those were 270. The next 10 will be 280 or 285. And then the next one will be 290. Then you'll reach like a peak, and then it'll kind of go back down like a roller coaster. And then it's like the last house that sells sometimes might sell lower than the ones that sold in the middle. And with that being the case, they're trying to maintain a certain type of equity in people's home ownership. And so with them trying to maintain that equity, they are doing back end things with incentives and buy downs and all that stuff. So instead of lowering the price to try to sustain equity, they are taking it off the back end. However, what I tell people is that you have to be mindful, especially with the buy downs, because with those buy downs, that can possibly get you trapped if something was to happen in the next year or two and you needed to get out of the house. It's going to be hard for you to jump out of the house, because let's just say they gave you a buy down of a 3.99 interest rate, and we're in a market now where interest rates are in the 6s. You're trying to move out of the house now, and you're not realizing, and you're trying to price your house at a certain price range, because you're like, okay, I need to get out of this house. I don't want to bring any money to the closing table. I bought it for 270, but I need to sell it for at least, let's just say 290. I'm just making up a number here because I don't have time to do the math. Let's say I need to sell it for 290 because the 6% fees that it's going to take me to get out of the house, whether if I'm using a realtor per se, the realtor fees, closing costs, depending on where you live at. Everybody's stuff is different in regards to, the title fees, all these different things, right? Which are inside those closing costs. So you need to have a certain, let's say 6 to 7% to kind of get out of the house. And what you have, and now it's like, I need to get out of this house. I can't afford to bring anything to the closing table. But the next person that's buying your house, now that you're at 290 at a 6% interest rate, they're like, I can't buy this house. This house is too expensive. I can't afford these monthly payments. You have a 3.99%. They have a 6%. They're not going to get that 3.99% because you got that from the builder. That whole community has been built out. They're not getting that interest rate from the builder. And they can't afford to, as a buyer, they can't afford to buy down that particular rate to get it down to 3.99 where you're at, if they're at 6%, unless they have a lot of extra, funds to do so. But most people don't. So then you become kind of stuck in the house as a buyer buying a new construction where the interest rates have been, I guess you could say, falsely manipulated down to a lower rate, because what they're doing now, because they're like everything's so unaffordable and people are screaming for affordability, they're like, well, let's just keep trying to see if we can get the rates lower. Even Trump is saying, oh, we need the rates lower. We don't need the rates lower. We need the home prices to be lower. The home prices to be lower and the rates where we're at right now, if they were lower, you could still successfully get into a house. You know, even if they did two, if it was tandem and they did rates lowered a little bit to from the from the low fives, I mean high fives, the low sixes, maybe go to the mid fives, and they bring down, let's say the house is 300,000, 350,000, they bring the house down to 300,000. That might cause some type of like, people are like, oh, I feel comfortable enough. Is at 5.5 or 5.2. The home prices went down $50,000. This kind of makes sense. I can kind of squeeze myself into home ownership. Not playing around with adjusting mortgages to 50 years. No. Not playing around with buying down the incentives like these new construction people are doing. And that's why now you have Lennar screaming like, we're losing money. Basically, we're losing money. We didn't paid all this money, and then also on top of that, they have inventory sitting. They didn't pay down for these big interest rate buy downs, and a lot of them, like I'll talk to some of the sales teams, and they'll be like, "Oh, we're this rate. They bought this rate down just until December of December 31st, 2025. After that, the rate goes up to this amount. So like some of them are buying down for a certain period of time too, as well. And so with all that being the case, they're losing. They're losing, unfortunately. They're losing money instead of just adjusting prices. And I think it's one home builder. Let me see. One of the home builders is actually are cutting the prices. It says Lennar said the price cuts were primarily due to an adjust. So right here it says in the quarterly earnings report Tuesday, Lennar revealed its average sales price was that. We read all that already. Let me see. Hold on real quick. I want to see. It's a one home builder that is cutting the prices, and I think we talked about this before in another live. Hold on. Sorry about this, y'all. Is cutting home prices because it was one that was cutting home prices. Of course they put Lennar on here, but what was the other one we were talking about? It was another home builder, and it's not coming up. Sorry, y'all. I don't want to take too much time looking for it. But it was another home builder. We talked about another live that was actually cutting prices instead of giving the incentives. And so we kind of see that trend happening. It could hopefully, create some inventory in the future for future home buyers if we get those prices adjust and they stop manipulating the market by these interest rate buy downs and also these home buyer down payment incentives. Because I'm telling people, if something was to happen within a year or two and you need to get out the house with that artificially interest rate buy down, it's going to be hard. Most people, especially like FHA, if there's no stake in the game and the way prices are kind of adjusting in the Metro Atlanta area, they're going into new construction and they're actually going into it already underwater. If you're an FHA home buyer, if you have an FHA loan per se, and if you're putting 3.5% down, if you're a VA, you're putting no money down. You don't have enough stake in the game, and so if you let's just say if you're a VA, right, and you going at zero down payment, and you get into the house for $350, and the next 3 months the house is $300,000. Typically, when I see the VA loans on the back end, if the house is 350 or the loan is 350, you'll see their loans will typically be higher. So it might be like 360 something because like all those other fees are like inside that loan. And so you're already underwater. So I'm just telling people, just be mindful. Hopefully it makes sense of what I'm saying. I don't know if it makes sense of what I'm saying, but I pray it does. But I just don't want people to end up underwater, and I want people to make sure if they are buying new construction, just to make sure if you can get the price of the new construction down, that would be the best bet to do. And if they're willing to still give you some down payment assistance, like some closing costs, something, take that too. And if you are going to take the interest rate, take it with the price being lower as well. So if you can do all of them in tandem, that would be great. I know that it's going to be a fight. I know some realtors are saying, oh, well, some of these new constructions are giving refrigerators now and this now and a finished basement and all this now. I'm like, we don't want that. We want the price to be lower. And we want the interest, if we can get it a good interest rate that makes sense with that price and get those incentives. All right. All right, thank you, Miss H. Nice seeing you guys. Nice seeing you here tonight. I appreciate you guys, and I'm actually going to make my way out as well. Hopefully, all of what we discussed tonight made sense. We talked about the Zillow lawsuit situation. Talked about what Donald Trump was talking about this housing market, investors reorganizing their portfolio and what's happening, and then we kind of got a little bit into Lennar and their earnings report and what's going on right now in this housing market with new construction. So again, if you're purchasing a house, if you're selling a house, especially in the Metro Atlanta area, just have a conversation with a local real estate professional. Or if you don't want to have a conversation with a professional and you want to do it yourself, definitely just make sure you're watching what the market is doing and be very strategic on how you decide to place your house on the market or how you decide to buy a house that is currently on the market if you're not using a realtor or if you are using a realtor. Remember, you can always do it yourself. You don't need our help. But if you do want the knowledge, the information, and the education, sometimes it doesn't hurt to reach out to a realtor to help you in your journey of buying or selling a property. I gotta go back to the beginning. Yes, go back to the beginning. Wasn't much said in the beginning, just a bunch of me rambling on like I'm doing now. But again, you guys have a wonderful night. Merry Christmas to everybody that joined. I appreciate everybody who always comes back to the channel. If you haven't, please subscribe to the channel. Like, share this video if it makes sense to somebody else that needs to hear it. And I will see you guys hopefully this Sunday after Christmas. Have a wonderful Christmas and a blessed holiday. Take care, you guys. Bye-bye.